Okay, we just finished talking about classes and how they're good for two things. The first is to create instructions for making objects, if you have a certain object that you like, and the other thing is that it allows you to share variables amongst a number of different functions and modularize your code. Here what we're going to do is we're going to talk about one of the best applications of a GUI, one of the best applications of a class, which is its use in creating a GUI application. And in this case, GUI stands for Graphical User Interface, and it allows us to do a number of things. First and foremost, it allows us to write a program that looks like a computer program, which has a window and buttons and displays, and all the things that you're used to. It makes your code a lot easier to use. It also makes people who aren't as familiar with coding a lot more comfortable using your program. But there's an additional benefit. The additional benefit is that GUIs allow you to actually automate different things and have multiple loops running at the same time without having to mess with something called multi-threading. Essentially, it's a high-level way or an easy way of doing more than one thing at once. So we're going to get into all of that. We're going to take this one step at a time, and I've presented a number of videos, the first of which is just going to be building a basic window, and a number of other videos that are going to go more into depth about the different GUI widgets. A widget is like a text entry field or a button, and how you can use them to spice up your program. So, how do we get started with GUI programming? I'm going to assume that you have Python installed, version 2.7.5, and in addition, I'm going to assume that you have the Tkinter library installed. That's Tkinter. If you have idle open, you have it installed because idle is actually written in TK. So, the first thing that we need to do in our Python script is go ahead and import the Tkinter module. That's all it takes, as you know. Now we're going to go ahead and define a class. You can call this class whatever you want. I call it an app. Now, of course, as we learned from before, we need to have an initialization function. Since we don't have any input arguments into our app, it's just self. So what do we need to do to initialize our application? The first thing we need to do is we need to define a master window for the GUI. The tk command with no arguments is what creates our master window. We're going to store this master window object in a variable called self.master. Remember, by putting self dot in front of the variable name, it means that we can access it from any other functions or methods within this class that we happen to define. In general, you want to append every variable with self dot. Now that we have a master window that has been defined, we can give it a title. This is done with the title method of the master object. And we'll say that it's my GUI. This function sets the title, or what you see at the top of the window, here it's entitled, here it's terminal, here's Python, to this string, my GUI. That's all we need to do to define a window. Now the only thing that we have to do at this point, the last line of code in any initialization function, is we have to begin the main graphical loop. In that case, the command to do that is self.master.mainLoop with no input arguments. After that, we're done. We go ahead and call the application down below, and that should be it. We're going to save this as a .py file. You can see in my terminal window, my GUI appears right here, so we can go ahead and run it. Now what do we get? We get a rather uninteresting blank window that pops up. The good thing is, congratulations, you've created your first graphical user interface. What's next is to fill that with different things, such as buttons and entry forms. We'll be covering that in the next videos.